Welcome to Waking Up America, the Not Morning Show. Today's news, Kari Lakes case moves to the Supreme Court of Arizona. Let's talk about this while we still can. Today's show is going to be a little bit of a short one here. I am your host, Alexander Graves, the usually constitutional conservative perspective of the night, and usually joined by a libertarian co-host. But we're just doing a short show today. Really wanted to get into the Kari Lakes situation. If you like this content, please consider following us on Twitter at AmericaWakeUp. And please head over on to buymeacoffee.com/wakeup if you'd like to support this content by buying me a cup of coffee. All right, let's go ahead and get into the news here. First things first, Kari Lake files and moves her case to the Arizona Supreme Court. This is huge news. I'm eager to see it. Kari Lake says specifically, "We are eager to have the highest court consider our mountain of evidence. We recognize the urgency of this situation. The sooner the people of Arizona are provided the legal remedy that they deserve, the sooner Kari Lake can begin to put Arizona first." She has a great agenda set forth for Arizona. One disappointing fact about this is the case is, unfortunately, like I've said in previous videos, moving forward with only 20% of her actual complaints. The initial judge ruled and threw out about 80% of them, even though most of them were backed with evidence. That being said, if the Arizona Supreme Court rules against this, it will go to the actual Supreme Court, which I think has a much higher chance of overturning this than the Arizona Supreme Court does, just due to the track record of the Arizona Supreme Court. But we'll see what's going on here. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of a deep dive into the actual petition here. So, jumping right in, one of their main statement here is that the background: a significant majority of voters no longer trust the outcomes of elections in Arizona. A functioning republic cannot exist for long in these circumstances. The evidence put forward in this case, including the changing and conflicting testimony of Maricopa officials and sworn testimony by whistleblowers employed by Maricopa, proved that Maricopa officials caused chaos arising at nearly 2/3 of Maricopa's 223 vote centers, admitted after first denying that illegally misconfigured ballots were injected into the election, causing tabulators to reject tens of thousands of ballots, disproportionately targeting Republican voters. At trial, counsel for Maricopa County blamed Republicans for voting on election day. You reap what you sow. Okay, so what's important from this? If you had watched the trial, or if you didn't, they basically got up on the stand, just lied, and then the judge just ignored the fact that they lied on stand. But it's very important here because they are able to put this into the new case, and showing the fact that they admitted culpability in this is huge. I don't know that any just court could look at this and be like, yeah, no, that seems fair. So we'll see where this goes. There are some really, even the 20% that they're claiming is just a glaring violation of our election policies. I don't know how anyone can trust another election in this country until this stuff is sorted out. There are just so many sketchy things happening. Back to it real quick. So the claim is that they violated chain of custody, which was admitted to in the case. Again, I don't know how this judge didn't vote in Kari Lake's favor, other than that he was probably scared. The chain of custody requirements with respect nearly 300,000 election day drop box ballots, including the inexplicable injection of over 25,000 ballots between November 9th and November 10th. So what does that mean? Chain of custody is essentially there needs to be a written form showing like who took this, where was it, where were these ballots, what happened to them in this procedure, were they always contained while moving from location to location, was anything violated during that. 300,000 ballots had no record of chain of custody. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know where they come from. They just show up. Yeah, that seems a little suspect. Now, before I deep dive into this a little bit more, I'm sure just saying the word Kari Lake is going to put probably an election denying thing on my video. So please hit the Rumble button if you're on Rumble, and please consider going over to Rumble. It's a much better free speech platform. Before I continue here. Okay. The other complaint here is that they allowed tens of thousands of ballots with voter signatures, which clearly did not match the record signature and were not properly cured to be counted in the 2022 general election in violation of ARS. So what is ballot curing? Ballot curing is basically verifying that the signature of the ballot matches to the signature of the person on the voter record. They found tens of thousands of these that did not match the signature, which means somebody forged those signatures and inserted these these ballots for them. This is either ballot harvesting or more than likely people just creating ballots and pushing them through the system. This is very dangerous. I mean, I don't understand why we even have the signature process if nothing's done about it. If these ballots were not cured correctly, why are they not thrown out? This makes no sense. Now, this election came down to 0.6%. If it was in 0.5%, we would have seen an automatic recount for Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs. And there is some information on that regarding a recount that happened for the Attorney General in Arizona, which the recount favored the Republican. More votes were found suddenly found again for the Republican candidate that were otherwise misplaced conveniently. Okay, so let's get into I've got another article here. 333,472 misdemeanors committed in Kari Lake's election, but trial court judge shrugged them off. Okay. So Hobbs was losing in almost every mainstream media poll and did not bother to debate Kari Lake, prompting one of the most prominent progressive journalists in the state to denounce her for hiding in her basement as political malpractice. Hobbs was such an unremarkable candidate that she only has 177,000 Twitter followers to Lake's 834,000 followers, over 400% fewer. Now, devil's advocate, you could argue that Kari Lake has national popularity. Honestly, I think she would be a good vice president candidate for DeSantis, but we can dream. That being said, Hobbs is not a likable candidate. If you saw any of her appearances on mainstream media, even on the left wing, they just didn't like her. Nobody liked her. Literally nobody liked this lady. And she never left the basement. She never debated. It makes no sense in a just world that she would somehow win this election. So the Republican Party has a 4% voter registration over Democrats in both Maricopa County and statewide. But despite this, 14% of voters supposedly flipped to the Democrats, which doesn't make sense because we have story after story after story right now of Democrats actually flipping party. Texas, several other states, sheriff's department, plenty of people are switching their ticket from Democrat to Republican because they don't want to identify as Democrats right now. That is a very strange discrepancy. Okay, a little bit more into it here. Lake's team discovered that over 298,942 ballots delivered to third-party signature verification service Runback Election Services on Election Day had no chain of custody and provided this evidence to Thompson. Why are we using third parties to run our elections at all? The tabulation machines are bad enough. We have these private companies running our elections for us and running these tabulation machines. That makes no sense. This should be representative of the people, not private companies. Okay. 9,530 duplicate ballots printed and issued with no chain of custody. 25,000 more ballots were found which lacked a chain of custody, totaling over 333,472 ballots. That is enough to sway this election. That is more than enough to sway this election. Just the fact that there's no chain of custody there, those ballots should have been thrown out. So the mainstream media is ignoring the prosecution threats that county supervisors have received, merely considering conducting a hand count of the ballots. Mojave County Supervisor Ron Gold was threatened with a felony and jail by Hobbs, who supposedly won this election and certified her own election. He was threatened by her for arrest if he didn't certify, and she threatened the county attorneys into not doing their legal job of representing county supervisors like him. Extortion theft states that it is a class 4 felony to threaten to, quote, take or withhold action as a public servant or cause a public servant to take or withhold action. So this case gets worse and worse for Katie Hobbs. I don't understand. Like there's no way a just court would rule in favor of Katie Hobbs here. She literally has been using the state to go after these government officials into forcing them to certify the election despite their complaints, and going after attorneys to not represent these people so that they have absolutely no just recourse. This is not a sane lady. It's not a nice lady. She is a tyrant. She's a communist. And all power to Kari Lake here. I'm really hopeful the Arizona Supreme Court gets this right and calls for either a recount or re-election here, because the amount of votes that you would lose here, I think it was something like 62%. Don't quote me on that, but Feel free to do your own research. 62% of the election machines in the Republican counties were not functioning correctly. Printer settings were off. They proved in the original case, that these ballots were printed on 18-inch paper instead of 19-inch. Now, mind you, all the way up until that day, until election day, they were working fine for all the early voting. And people know that statistically, Republicans tend to vote in day, not early. So it'd be really convenient for somebody to just go in and modify all the printer settings and all of these voting locations on election day. That causes these Section 3 ballots to be pushed aside. 18-inch ballots do not get read by the Scantron, so these votes were not counted. They were done by hand in some places, and there were several discrepancies discovered in others where they just happen to be discovering votes now. It gets worse. So new votes were recently, new votes were found recently in Pinal County, favoring Republican Abe Hamadi in his tight race against Chris Mays, dropping her lead to only 280 votes. But his case remains dismissed by a judge. In a similar close races around the country, the election results were often reversed due to similar anomalies. Okay, I just want to point this out real quick. This vote was within millions. This is a million plus vote election here, and it came down from 511 votes down to 280 on the recount. This is so razor thin. It's not even funny. Any judge who saw a vote this close should have insisted a little bit of more inspection into this election here. Some more coincidences found were favoring Democrats previously include bad signatures accepted 14 more times during the 2020 election than during this year's primary election. Maricopa County hired 145 more Democrat poll workers than Republicans to staff the primary election. Despite the massive push Republicans made to work there, Arizona State Rep. Sonny Borelli recently discovered that over 21,000 ballots in a 5% sample were illegally cast in 2020. Like it says here, all eyes now are on the Arizona Supreme Court and then SCOTUS, so Supreme Court of the United States. If this fails in Arizona, it will be going to the Supreme Court. I think it is so important that this inspection is done, because this is not just happening in Arizona. This is happening nationally. These votes are found randomly. I mean, the 2020 election is its own thing. We're not going to get into it fully, but I mean, having this transparency in our elections is necessary to keep hold of our republic. We cannot move forward as a country and claim to have democratic elections here if we have one party running them. I mean, 145 more Democrat poll workers to Republicans. That should be a 1-to-1 split. But when the Democrats are in power, they use their power like an iron cudgel to beat us down. We will continue to beat against the Democrat voting machine here. And I mean, until the Supreme Court makes a decision on this, I'm not sure. I mean, every election up here is going to be an uphill battle. Back to Kari Lake here for a sec. She said specifically on Twitter, "I'm not going to lie to you. I've had days where I just go, I'm tired, but I can't walk away. I can't say to the children, good luck. I had a great life. I had freedom in America. Good luck and enjoy communism. So we fight on." She is 100% correct on this. 1, we need to support Kari Lake. 2, we need to fight the communists. First things here. Even if Kari Lake doesn't win this case, or rather, let's say she wins the case, but they don't overturn the election. And mind you, she did file for expedition here with the Supreme Court due to the timeline here of becoming governor. This does need to be settled soon. So we'll see if it does go to the Supreme Court. It may end up missing that timeline. They may rule in her favor, but she may not actually become the governor. We'll see what happens. That being said, we need this fight. We need some inspection into these policies, into the whole election process, because it is being run into the ground by the Democrat Party. And it is so important that we must fight for our children against communism. We cannot stop. We cannot sleep. We must continue fighting communism until it is entirely struck out from our system. The madness continues. You've seen it in society today. The decay continues. I'm going to continue this in another segment, either later tonight or tomorrow. The madness just keeps on going. But I wish you all a happy new year. I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my bones that this is going to be the year. This will be the conservative uprising. We will rise and continue this fight. I don't want to end with a black pill, so I'm going to give you a lovely white pill here. Just be glad that you are not one of these patients. A British medical practice accidentally texts all of its patients a message telling them that they have aggressive lung cancer instead of wishing them Merry Christmas. So be glad that you're not them. If you support this content, you like this stuff, you like getting updates on Kari Lake and the rest of the news, please follow us on Twitter at AmericaWakeUp. And like I said in the beginning of the video, please consider supporting our content by buying us a cup of coffee. Any little bit helps. It encourages us to keep making these videos. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, keep around in the chamber, fight communism to the end.